Hello, that should be working. Yes, cool.
Hi.
And Lauren's here as well. Hey, Lauren. And I didn't take the chat off this two-screen view. I just realised, but never mind. Um, hello, hi Yulia. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Okay, tired. That's what having a new puppy does to you.
Oh, how is it doing?
He'll sleep longer. It's the getting up early and taking him out to the loo and things that's getting um, a bit tiring. Just broken sleep patterns. But anyway, yes, you always need more dogs.
I just realized that I've been telling people I've been spending time with a collie puppy. It took some time to realize
No,
it's not a collie, it's
Cocker
a
Spaniel.
cocker.
Yes, working. Yeah, this one's a cocker. Gizmo is half collie, um, but no, this one's all Cocker Spaniel. So he's. Anyway, right. Should we? Want me to make the chat fonts work? It's all right, Lauren, because we're going to take the chat off in the when we switch to the twin screen view. It'll disappear anyway. So in fact, we could probably do that now, and then we'll make sure we go to that one. We don't have chat on there. Cool. So
we kind of gave it away. What
we're
are
going
we
to
going to
talk about
today,
Node-RED
Sam?
because people seem to like Node-RED. Node-RED's the interesting stuff, I think. The other things are fun, but Node-RED, so we can do the cool stuff. So we're going to talk about projects, aren't we? I think the projects feature of Node-RED, which it was in. Well, so I was trying to look at this up this morning. I think it was in kind of as a hidden, like very beta-y feature in one of the earlier, like 0.18 or something. But
Yeah, it's 2018.
okay, so it is. Yeah,
Early
I think it's. I can't
2018.
remember when it became sort of a properly mature thing. Whether it was when is that on that screen? Have you got the docs page for projects there? Let's see what. This in 0.8 release the feature is in preview mode. I think it was really part of the 1.0 release, if I remember rightly, but it might have been one of the ones just before that. But anyway, it's and now we're on 1.1.
And it's still not available in IBM
Yeah,
Cloud.
I don't know why that is. Obviously something to do with running it in a container. Or maybe that's because the settings. So you have to enable it in your settings file. I don't know if it's just because you can't do a custom setting on IBM Cloud. Can you? I think you can. Well, you can probably
Maybe.
create a custom container image, but maybe it's just because you can't do the thing. So one of the interesting things is with enabling it in the settings as of 1.1, we don't have to edit the settings if you want to try something out. I think, is it on there? If you scroll down a touch on your screen today? No, it's not.
I do have it
Yeah,
open
there
in
was
another one.
a piece I seen this morning about command line settings, this
This
stuff.
one.
So we've got that link there, overriding individual settings. And so now you can just start up Node-RED with the Node-RED command and give it any setting you want just for that session, which is kind of useful if you just want to play with it and you don't want to kind of worry about editing your settings file and things. So it would be, we'd have to work out the path for that, but I've enabled it in my settings file.
So, projects. Why would I want to use projects in
So
Node-RED?
what projects gives you is basically integration with Git or GitHub. So I suppose you make Git is the protocol and the system. So most people probably heard of GitHub, but a lot of people kind of use Git and GitHub interchangeably. GitHub is just the largest or most common, most well-known Git service. So it's Git in the cloud. Whereas Git is I'm sure if Lorna was here, she could probably correct me with this, but Git is both an application on your machine, and a collection of network protocols and a server piece. So there's, hey Lorna. So yeah, Lorna, define Git quickly for us. It's a couple of different pieces, but it's a way of synchronizing files and things and moving stuff up to a service. So in this case, GitHub, but you could use anything. So other ones are Bitbucket is Git based, GitLab. You could just run your own Git server anywhere if you really wanted to. Git is a historical novel and a command line tool. So yeah, it's a way really of managing your config and your code. So although we say that Node-RED is low code, we do have something, and we still, what it produces is, I suppose it is code, but what it produces is you're not writing the code, it's a tool to create code, kind of, in its own language. But basically, your flows and the associated settings that you need from your Node-RED instance are actually behind the scenes are just a bunch of files. And what project allows you to do is to manage those files or to upload and download those files to a Git-based repository. So you can then, either for backup, possibly for deployment, although I've been looking at some stuff with that this morning, so it may be that, it's how you manage your config, really, your code, and also for sharing and things. So I can build something on my Node-RED, commit it to Git, push it up to a repository in GitHub, and then share that repository with you, and you can pull that code down. And it does things like keeping track of the changes and all that kind of stuff. And then, so Node-RED now has a built-in, I suppose, Git client of its own to give you some visual kind of indications of what it's doing. So should we have it's probably easiest if we, in fact, let's switch over to a Node-RED editor and just create a really simple flow. And then if you can maybe export that to a clipboard or something, just so we can see what that looks like. Because that will.
Yes, I'm gonna run local today. So, where's the terminal? Right, so starting Node-RED. I'm interested to see how projects compares to export and import.
Yeah.
And whether there are things that are being preserved as opposed to the export.
So, so that, well, so what it does, it exports, it creates a few things. But so I thought, well, if we start off with a basic, just create something on a.
I'm quickly disabling.
This is the other thing that project is good for, is if you're organized enough, you can then have multiple different sets of flows and load them in and load them out through your editor, without having to disable stuff. So let's
No, this is without projects
let's
enabled.
just create a quick flow. Just do an inject to a debug or something, so we can see what that is.
Right.
And a debug. Connect together, deploy, and now if we then go to our file menu and export to clipboard. There we go. So what we get there is our flows. And actually, can you copy that to the clipboard? And then if you go to jasonlint.org, lint.org, you just search jasonlint, yeah, or .com, and drop it in there and validate. You click validate, it should, there we go, makes it a bit easier to see. So what we have then is a JSON object. This is really what your flow is. And it's just a set of config for the nodes. And it actually even includes, if we scroll down a little bit, X and Y, it even tells you those are the coordinates,
the position
of where they are on the flow, which is why when you export a flow, you get the same positioning. So it's both saying this is, you have one of these nodes, and really what that is a set of instructions to the editor to how to recreate the flows. It says put one of these nodes here, give it this ID. It's this type of node. These are the parameters, and this is where it is. And then the wires show what other nodes it's connected to. So you see the wires piece there. That says there's a wire going to B97, whichever node it's connected to, and that's the ID of the other node. So that ID matches the node below it, because the input is wired to the. So really, that's all our flows are. But there are certain things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if you connected to multiple ones, you'd see lists of things in there. So really, that's a complete set of instructions for how to recreate our flow. What it doesn't export is credentials. So we have, I always get these two modeled up. We have configuration nodes, which are those hidden nodes which hold a set of settings for. So if we look at what's going to have a configuration node in it, ngrok will. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you've got your configuration nodes there somewhere, yeah. But global configuration nodes. I was thinking more if you look at one of the nodes, like the send SMS node or something.
So send SMS.
And then when we have one of these where it's a set of credentials, and then we go the little add new pencil to add basic. What we do there now is we add a config node.
We'll need the
so that is a configure. Oh, sorry, don't worry. We don't need your credentials.
Okay.
You go back. But what we're creating now, when we chat with our pencil, is we create a configuration node, which is a node that doesn't appear in the palette, but is used by other nodes to store any config we want to be reusable. Within that node, or actually within even a regular node, certain variables or certain settings can be marked as credentials settings. So those are ones which shouldn't be, which are basically where you store secrets, things like that. So where you store, I believe on this, on the next ones, the API key we've set as just a property, but the API secret is a credential. So when you export something into a flow, it doesn't export your credential. In fact, let's just try it. Let's put just create one, put the values in as API, my API key and my secret or something, because we're not going to use it for real. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yep. And then just 1, 2, 3 or something in those. Yeah. So just there. We're not going to use this. We're just going to do this for exporting.
Yeah.
So if you go back now, if you deploy that, and then not complaining, but export that flow again and see what we've got in there. We can see a node with some.
That's interesting.
Did it not? Maybe it just didn't pick up, or.
Okay.
It saved the config node. Yeah, I just don't. I think maybe it just. It's because you hit can. Yeah, no, that's it. Okay, just yeah. There we go. Fine. Yeah, happy. Or maybe you just didn't select something.
Right.
Yeah, if we export that and see what's in there.
Should I format it here?
Oh yeah, actually, I forgot we had formatting there. Yeah, let's just format it there. So if we scroll down now, so there we go. So we have our SMS node,
yeah.
And that has our to, our from, and our text parameters in there. So they're exported. But if we scroll down and look at our and somewhere, I think so. Yeah, you see there it's got creds, and it actually points to a node ID, because that's referencing like a wire. BD79 is that Nexmo basic node beneath it. If you scroll down a little,
yes,
you should see. No, so we don't export either. Okay. I couldn't remember. So both the API key, so there is a node, but it hasn't exported the key or the secret. So I think both the key and the secret are credentials nodes. So it has a node, but it does with an ID, but they wouldn't be in our normal export. Now credentials are stored in a separate file. So when you hit deploy, it saves everything to your Node-RED instance in a flows.json file, which looks pretty much like this. But it also stores a flows_cred.json file, which is where it stores all the credentials, and that's an encrypted file. Those credentials are encrypted with a secret, which is when you set up in your settings. I think that by default it just generates a unique system one when you install Node-RED, but you can override it. So if you're moving credentials between systems, sometimes you need to actually make sure that the secret is the same on both of them. So there's a credential. I think there's a warning sometimes that says you're using a system-generated credential secret when you start it up. But so those aren't exported, the credentials and the secret. The other thing that isn't exported in that flow is we've said when in our export, hey, we've got a send SMS node from the Nexmo package, but we don't know if I have a brand new Node-RED instance, which there's nothing in there which tells us what package it's part of in the export. So it tells us there's a node with a type. If you scroll down a bit, you'll see somewhere. There we go. There's a node with a type of send SMS, but we have no idea, and that type isn't necessarily unique. We have no idea of knowing what package that node has come from in our export. So unless so if you send me that export, I then have to make sure I've already installed the same packages as you. So one of the other things we want, go on.
So there's no way in export import to say these are the dependencies that you need to install.
Not with an export. So an export import was really built more for exporting from your own environment. I think from your own machine that you've already got set up, or you're managing it some other way. So what we don't have is we don't have the dependencies, we don't have the credentials. All we have is the flows, which is useful for some things, but and obviously for publishing that's kind of useful sometimes. Although dependencies are quite useful there as well. What projects does is the stuff it commits to Git is the flows. So in the same way as an export, but also it exports the encrypted credentials file and the dependencies. So we get everything we need to recreate that on another machine, provided we have the credentials secret, because the credentials is an encrypted file. So, and which is one of the reasons to not use the system-generated credential. Well, I believe you can use the system-generated credential secret if you know what it is. But obviously, if I back up my flows, I back everything up to a project, say the one on my Raspberry Pi that runs the house, and that Raspberry Pi SD card melts or something, and I need to rebuild it, I've got all the credentials in that file, but unless I know what the secret is, I can't use that file. So it's generally better to set your own secret and keep a note of that in your password manager or somewhere. Don't generally check it into GitHub. But obviously you can store all the credentials as an encrypted one. So yeah, that's what an export looks like, and it's kind of different. So let's have a go at setting up a project, shall we?
Yes. So I'm guessing I'll have to enable projects.
Oh yeah, if you haven't
first.
got projects enabled, in fact, let's try it with seeing as you're using the command line. Let's try it with that -d switch.
All right, so it's -d and then setting the value.
I'm going to check what the value is, because it's going to be.
And then in project it says.
It's going to be
editor
project.
theme.
It's going to be editor theme
projects.
.project .enabled equals true. I believe would be the notation. So rerun your commands. Yeah.
So
Node
I'm
red.
restarting
Minus
Node-RED.
capital D.
Minus D.
And then I think it's dot notation. Editor theme. Camel case. Dot projects. Dot enabled. Equals true. Try that. Let's see. Active project. Just reload the whole page. That's it's probably better to reload the editor. Is it May? Yes, you now have the projects icon up there, the little branch one in the tool. And I think I can't see your top of your screen on here. Have a look on the screen. If we go to our main menu.
Main menu.
You've got projects. Have you created a project before
So
on this machine?
I've tried it before with the minus D and then without, and I assume
Yes,
that
but so you've got projects already created on the machine, so it's finding your project settings because it stores some additional. So the Node-RED instance also stores some additional info about your project. So it creates a new folder in Node-RED called projects, which is where it stores like what the GitHub repos and the name of your project and the actual Git history for that. So you've got to enable. If you disable it, so this will find some old stuff in there. But let's go to our menu.
things disappeared.
What's disappeared?
So the flow we created disappeared.
Oh yes,
and then
yeah,
we are back to
because
the initial state.
Started. We restarted. It should have saved it. I think that's probably pulled back something from your project, maybe because you're in a project. If you go to the menu, the normal, top one.
Top.
Now look in projects.
Yep.
And go. Let's go project new and start a new project. Yeah, and now, so let's create a new project, and what that should do is, there we go. So we can actually do the encryption piece of the credentials there, which is quite nice. I'm going to call our flow file. You see where it's got credentials. Now let's enable encryption, and just set a password. Just set it to password or something. That'll do. It doesn't matter for this. Okay. Now I think.
Yeah, let me make sure. Okay.
I think what this is going to do is it's going to create a new. I think this will wipe your editor to a blank one. Yes. So now you're in a completely different workspace. So it's almost like thinking of a project like a workspace.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can build a little flow.
So I should always start the projects first. Well, enable it,
create a new project,
then
build something, check it into Git, and then you can reopen it as a project. So you can use project without GitHub, just locally on your Node-RED instance to switch between workspaces. You haven't even got to push them up to GitHub. Obviously, it's useful to push them up to GitHub but that's really for backup and collaboration and sharing rather than yourself kind of thing. If you just want to use them yourself, then.
So, what options do we have here?
So
Prod.
So you can see dependencies, I think, in there. And that was interesting because, so there are no dependencies because you've not used any nodes that are of like non-standard build. If you drag, say, the ngok node onto that now, I think you probably need to deploy for projects to pick it up. And look at projects menu, dependencies. Yeah, you see now it says, this project includes the ngrok package. I don't know what add to project does. Okay, I think maybe you have to say yes, I'm definitely using them, so that before you kind of commit it. And we've got in settings. Yeah. So we've got our standard setup at the top there, and we've got our branches, our local branch. So we're working in master. What we don't have is what's called a remote. So a remote is another server like GitHub. So we could add if we wanted to. So let's first of all, before we do any of that, let's just keep it local. So close out of that one. And if you go to the little projects button by the info menu, the middle one, so we've got our local files, but we haven't committed anything. So if we've changed two things. We've changed our flow and we've changed our package, because our package we've added that new node to our package.json with the ngrok stuff. So if you just tap, and you see there, it actually shows you the Git deltas. So it says, no, your dependencies previously was nothing. Now your dependency is Node-RED ngrok.
It's cool. So it does a diff.
So if we do, I think just the plus all at the top there, that should, So that's now, that's added them to Git, so they're tracked files. So that's the git add command. You git add dot. And now if we do commit, it'll ask you for a commit message, just like Git. Commit, and we've committed that locally. So those changes are now committed, and it's in your Git history. But it's all still on your local machine. So you could now...
So how would I go about...
Sorry, go on.
How would they make it
so
not
so if we want to push this up to GitHub, I think what you need to do is you need to create a repo on GitHub. So if you go to your GitHub first, I haven't found a way you can create repos from here.
Do you want web app
just
or
on the
terminal?
web. That's right. Tell me if you want to go to secrets or anything. And just add a new repo. Click on the top there. The green button there. Let's call it low code something. That'll do. We don't want to add any of the readmes or license, because that actually creates files and we end up in a mess then. So just that'll do. Low code hour test. Create repository for now. We're just going to create already. And obviously we'll make this one public so I can see it. Okay, now, if you, you see where at the top there it's got the SSH URL, Git at GitHub. Just copy that with your, Okay, go back to Node-RED. So this is where we want to go. Project settings. So menu, projects, settings.
Okay.
Settings, and we can. No.
I think something.
Yep. Down to settings, and we're going to add a remote. So we're going to call our remote origin, and we're just going to drop that URL in there. Click add remote. Now, hopefully, what it should be is it should be quite happy with this, because your Mac or your machine has your GitHub credentials set up already as an SSH key. This uses your machine's internal GitHub settings, so you don't need to kind of tell Node-RED about your GitHub credentials at all, because it'll just inherit those from the system. You can set them just for Node-RED as well. There's a I'll option in the docs somewhere. You can create, I think it's in projects, you can create a settings file or something where you can store key in. It's in the config, but the easiest one is if you're running on a machine that's set up for it.
I think that shows up when you go new. And then...
Clone may. Hang on, don't change anything for now because we don't want to lose.
No, I won't. Because I know it prompts you when you first open up your editor after enabling projects. We just missed out on that one right now because I already had projects switched on and off before.
Oh, it prompts you for the credentials. I think you can put in your HTTP credentials, but if you've got SSH credentials, then it'll just use that certificate anyway. Or that key. I don't think mine doesn't use it, but so what we can do now is we've got everything committed in our local repository. So our local copy of Git on our machine is committed, and the remote, and it's configured to know a remote. So we're going to push. We're going to do our Git push basically. Which this is the one that took me a while to find. I think is that little up and down arrow. Yeah. Manage remote branch. Yeah.
Manage
if you tap
remote
that,
branch.
and then I think it will say remote. Oh, we need to select your local branch. Tap there. And we need to create a branch. So we created a repo, but we don't have a branch on it. So we can call our branch main or whatever we want to call it because we're not using master anymore. Yep. So we're going to create a branch called main on the repo. Tap. Yep. That. Okay. And then if we hit push, we're now going to do git push origin main. And if you go to your GitHub now, reload that page. Boom. There we go. So everything's pushed up. So let's have a look at what we've got in here, because this is probably quite interesting. So the README it creates is, I think we set that up when we originally created the project, didn't we? Node-RED did that for us.
Yes. So this was the description. This was the title, and then whatever is in README.
We just left
up here.
A generic thing, didn't we? I don't know what it actually. Let's have a look at what it puts in the git ignore file, because that's. So do you know what the git ignore file is? It's the files that shouldn't be tracked. So yeah, anything with backup, basically, that makes sense. Because Node-RED sometimes creates backup files. And then we've got our flow.json. So look at that one. That's going to be one great big long line. If you go raw, I think. And then we'll have to copy it to a linter. I don't know what. So that should look the same as our previous export would. So we've got our inject node. We should have we've got an ngrok node somewhere, don't we? Which I think might have the settings. Yeah, ngrok with a creds node. We didn't set up any creds for ngrok actually, did we? But never mind. So that's the same as what you'd get in an export. But let's have a look at some of the other files in GitHub. So that flow.cred, that one might be empty. Yes, because we don't have any credentials. But that is what. In fact, if you go to my GitHub for a second.
Here.
Because there's one in there I was playing around with. And scroll. Click on repositories, I guess. There we go. NR project test down a bit. Sam created a repository there. That was the one I was playing around with this morning. Yeah, if you look in the creds for that one, you'll see that that's got a set of cred. That's actually a credentials object for a think it's going to send SMS node actually I was playing with. But we could probably look at the flows. So that is a set of encrypted credentials. They just say user and pass or something. They're not real ones, but so that's stored my encrypted credentials. But obviously we have no idea from looking at the repo what the encryption password used for those credentials is.
So how would this look like if I wanted to see your project in Node?
We'll do that in a sec. So just have a quick look in the package.json as well, the final one. So that should show. In fact, yeah, there's no dependencies. What did I use as I can't remember what credentials I set up in it, but so that's just specifying. If you look at your, you go back to your one and you look at your package.json. We should see the ngrok package in there. Yeah. So it said because your project uses ngrok 011. So we could, yeah. So that's probably a good time. So let's try and download or check out a repo from one I created. So you've got, if you go back to my repo, yeah, just go to the home of that project.
Like that.
You're right.
Yes. So your project
there. Yep. And where's it gone? They've changed it. Is that the green drop down now for code? Where'd you get the URL for it? Yeah, there we go. And switch to SSH because I think we know that was, and copy that. So you've got the repository for mine. Now if we go back to your Node-RED and create a new project, but this time project's new. Now we're going to clone a repository. So yeah, you give it a name. So what you call it might be different to mine.
And then this is the URL. And now I would need your passphrase.
No, that would be for. Oh, that's interesting. Your setup. That's the SSH key for Git. That's because maybe you're set up for HTTP. If you go back and copy the. That's all because when we pushed it, we used SSH. If you copy the HTTP URL from GitHub instead. Yeah. Yeah, it's asking for your GitHub credentials still. That's interesting. Thought it would just use the existing ones. Do you want to let me switch to sequence and just drop your GitHub username and password in? Cool. We're on sequence, so hopefully it'll comment out the password anyway. I don't know how this will work with two-factor auth as well. Actually, that'd be interesting. This might need. So that I can't. What the? Hang on, let's come back. That's the for the project. Did I? So I don't think I actually set one up when I did that. So I think I'm used the generic one or something. So it won't be able to decrypt the credentials object in there. But that's fine. What I'm curious about is whether this. It's going to fail, isn't it, without the credentials key? So we need to. Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, clone repository. Yeah, just hit clone repository now without a key. Yeah, the credentials file is encrypted, but the key is invalid. Has it actually loaded the thing? I think I forgot to set up the. No. Okay, let's try this the other way. So you've pushed one up with a key of. Can you remember what you set as the credentials key on your project?
Password.
Is it just password? Or is it password 123?
I believe password.
Shall I try
Security first.
Shall I try downloading your project?
Sure.
So if you want to stop sharing, and I'll switch to my screen. Oops. There we go. So Julia codes, isn't it? Yes.
Yes.
Test. What I'm confused with is, why is that not? Because I'm not signed into GitHub. Just do that. Yes, hang on 2 seconds. Let me just sign into this and then get my 2FA working. Cool. And back. Can you not see my screen in Skype? I'm sharing it. Ooh. And my lights went off. Alexa, turn on office lights. What was that? No. Can you see my screen? Have a look in. It should be somewhere in the Skype call, I think, because I'm definitely sharing it because the other machine's seeing it. So. Oh, Alex. So Alex, you missed the beginning. It's a setting, so you can either do it with settings JS, or so you can actually do it on the command line when you start Node-RED. So you can do a -D, -D, editor theme .projects.enable true for that session, or yeah, just edit something in your settings JS. Does secrets mute Julia? Quite possibly secrets mutes Julia. Or rather, her audio maybe isn't in there because the Skype setting isn't in there. I think there's like a fan or something running. There's a lot of fan noise on your. Is it your it's not your laptop whirring though, is it?
There isn't anything else, so yeah. I don't know.
It's a very, very strange noise we've got this week. It's like a hissy.
I have the exact same setup.
You got your headset's wired in, isn't it? Or
yeah. As for the past couple of weeks.
Strange.
I do hear my laptop through the noise cancelling headphones, so that might be it.
Yeah, so sorry, Alex, that's how we enable it. Can you see my?
Have
you found my screen yet, Julia?
No, I have not. If that doesn't endanger us breaking things, could you please reshare it?
Let's stop sharing. Screenshot grant. Huh? What is my Mac doing? It's being weird about sharing the screen. I'm definitely sharing the screen because OBS can see it. And Skype has got the permission.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't know why you can't see it. That's very annoying. And also, it's not now letting me cancel sharing because it says when I try and cancel the sharing, you need to set up permission to share it.
That's fine. Carry on.
So we were, I was going to try and grab your repo. There we go. Using the SSH one. So I'll copy that. If you go on the, well, it'll be too behind if you try and watch it on the stream. And we go to Node-RED, and I go projects new. Yeah, I don't need those in the last one. And I'm going to clone a repo. My repo is that. GitHub RSA. Oh, that's right. It was asking for the password. Yes, SSH key was correct. It's, if you've got a passphrase set up on your SSH key, you can put it in there, but if not, you'd leave it blank. And you're thinking, you think the credentials key was just passwords, do you? I thought you said something else.
Yes.
If anybody can rewind and tell us what we set as the password for the key. Let's try that. Oh, no, get on that key. So many keys on that machine. Yes. Cool, so that's worked. But it's complained of an unknown node type of ngrok, because I don't, in this version, have the ngrok package installed. That's interesting. So if we say manage dependencies, yeah, it's now going to prompt me to install the ngrok package. So it doesn't automatically install what you need, but it says, okay, do you want to install these now? There we go. So I've got the ngrok.
So as opposed to export and import, this actually lists out all the dependencies, and you can just click through them and have everything sorted.
It just asks you to manually say, yes, I want to install that. Yes, I want to install that. Yes, I want to install that. And it obviously looks at the versions and things as well, although it's using the latest version. So now I've got your flow here, with your credentials. Now, I can't make it. Actually, let's try. Can you invite me as a collaborator to your project?
Yes.
And see if I can make a commit.
Guess
If I make a change, I'm actually going to. I'm going to put some credentials in now for the auth token in ngrok. I'm going to fix that and set this up. I'm going to add something to make ngrok work. Message payload we have to send on. Turn on ngrok. And a debug. Have you added me? So you think?
I can't see collaborators.
It's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this stuff seems.
Like down
Where have they moved it?
Yes.
Actually? Oh, I'm looking at your project. So. The difficult thing is then I have to accept, and I never seem to get the invite, so the invites get sent somewhere odd.
I did do it now.
I think if I keep reloading on it, it will. Where does it send it to me? I have thousands of notifications. Yeah, I know I have thousands of notifications. Where does it show me that I've been invited? Under security? No. Keep changing things. Somewhere this should show me, because I have to accept your invite to the repo, don't I, to be able to actually.
Maybe email?
Yeah, let's just switch that. Secrets. And yeah, it does mute you. Lorna, to answer the question, I just put on secrets while I bring up my email because I have no idea what's in my inbox. There we go. Julia Biro. View invitation. Cool, we'll go back. So, yeah, Julia has invited you to collaborate. Accept. So now, yeah, I'm a collaborator on there. I have push access. Going back to my project. So I've made some changes. And now, oh, I need to deploy. So I've made some updates. I'm going to add those updates. I'm going to commit them. with a comment of fixed ngrok. Commit that, and then this is the bit I can find. Ah, yeah, there we go. Hide the remote is origin main. I'm going to push that. Change up. Okay, commit message one. Oh, go on. Yeah, fixed ngrok. So if we look in GitHub, I can see my commits there because I've made the commit. So now if you go back to your project, let's see if we can get the screen sharing to play. Yeah, I have. This is weird. Skype's having a bad day. Stop sharing. Oh, there we go.
So should I now share mine?
If you try sharing yours. Hopefully it'll pick up yours. That's very cool. That's gone. Why is? Yeah, there we go. Oh, well, let me find it so I can see it on a screen. Obviously, cool. So if you go into your project, into your Node-RED, and hit the little circle. No, you need to do a pull. So hit the up-down arrows. No, not that one. That one. Yeah. And hit pull or tap the. Do you need to tap the?
Maybe a refresh.
Yeah, I think that'll. Yeah, that might refresh the remote. Oh, there we go. Yeah, your repository is one commit behind. So now if you do a pull. There we go. And it's picked up my changes.
And I can review the changes.
So, yep, I'm going to merge them, or I'm happy with them, whatever. Yeah.
Sorry. Yep.
And it'll update your flow. There we go. So I added some extra nodes, and I added some. Now, if you look in your ngrok node, and look at the edit the auth token. That's it. Yeah, this is not a real token, so that's the credentials I put in. So it's now we can actually, we're sharing our credentials because we're both using that key of password, that credentials encryption key of password, which isn't in GitHub. But if we go back and look at the GitHub repo,
so this
your
is my
one, yeah.
repo.
That's it. Look at the files for that.
Yes.
Just code. Yeah, if we look in our flow cred JSON, which I edited, there we go. We've got an encrypted value of this is not a real token. But there's no way of knowing what that token is without knowing what the encryption key is for that file, which it happens to be in this case password. But
so in case I wanted to export this one, and then format
but it won't export that credentials. So you have ngrok, it'll say creds, it'll point to a creds node, but if you keep going down, there should be another node underneath it, which is somewhere. There's an ngrok creds node, I can't remember what they're called. Ngrok auth, yeah, but it doesn't have the actual credentials in the config node. If you export it, but obviously by using projects, you can. And now you could switch back to one of your previous projects. So if you want to go open project open, and we look at let's do that test Node-RED project. Or was that your first one? I think. Open that one. Yep, and it will switch your view back to all of those. So there's kind of two things we can do with projects. We can use it to back up and manage and store what we're building into something like GitHub, which is really useful for backup. And I really need to do this on the smart home one actually that I'm running because I've got all that config, and it's a really useful way of backing up when you're making changes, storing everything in GitHub. But also, and then we can push stuff, so we can push stuff up to GitHub, and other people can download it into other instances of Node-RED and work with it. with or without the credentials. I don't think there's a way to say don't commit credentials. I didn't see that. So it's probably, if we were going to be, so let's say you were going to publish a project for a blog article you wrote on how to build something with Node-RED, and you commit that to a repo and publish the repo and make the repo public. What you'd need to do there is remove ways is set the is put in so like we do when we put sample code out, dummy credentials values of API underscore key, API underscore secret, and also a dummy credentials password or something, so that if somebody downloads it, they can, or forks it, they can then use that and change it. But obviously, if you just committed it, you would be committing it with your credentials, although they would be encrypted, your credentials. So that's one way we can use it with something like GitHub. The other one, though, we can just use projects locally within Node-RED to just organize our workspace and kind of have different things, different projects we might be working on active at any one time, and switch them between each other and save them. So it's a save and load kind of function as well. I'm not sure about things like rolling back changes. I guess you can do that in the commit history, can't we?
Let's see.
So if you go back to forget this one, let's go back to the one that we were working on for the cats. Yeah, so commit message 1. So if you want to go back to there, can you click on that? It shows it. I don't know if there's a way to say just restore Node-RED to this position. You can see what the changes are. Obviously, when you're looking at the changes, what it's actually tracking is the changes in the file. So it's not necessarily that easy if you're not used to reading kind of JSON files and stuff. I'm wondering if it's possible to tell it to just go back to a point in time.
If it is possible, I believe it's an undocumented feature.
Yeah. Here's the commit. Global node. Added. It shows everything it did. I guess you'd maybe have to do that within GitHub, or within Git is remove a commit and then pull it from that point. I'm just looking online. That shows what it is. There's no revert in here, I don't think. That's the sort of thing where I tend to message Lorna and ask her, I've done something terrible in Git, how do I undo it? Because I know how to commit my stuff. I commit stuff to Git so that I can ask Lorna how I undo it when I break something. And that's my go-to. But yeah, I mean, we can see where changes are. Really, the major thing for this for me is backing stuff up. It's a really good way of backing up, and also backing up your credentials. So if you've done something like I've done with the smart home thing, where I'm storing a few. I've got quite a few, because I've got things like passwords for smart plugs and passwords for Hue and all the different settings for the house. Just the flows on their own don't back all of that up. But,
so it would be more a solution for backup and sharing between the people who are working deliberately on the same project, as opposed to just sharing projects on the internet, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting. There's no reason why. I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't make it available to somebody to, you couldn't build a public demo and download my latest voicemail blog post or something. is it any? What's interesting, I suppose, is that so when we've written the tutorial blog posts before, you do kind of, you talk through how you build it, and you can see as you're building up the nodes. Obviously, if you just say, oh, just download this project, you've got it all there, but you have no idea how it was put together.
So it could work if I were to commit every step of building the flow, and then someone would pull that.
Could you
and see
pull
what
from
happened?
an individual point? I don't know, because it'd be one repo, so the points are just milestones in it. That's what I was looking for this idea to step through commits. What would be really nice would be if we could kind of click on the let's go with that. Click on a commit message at any point and take off, and it would just take the flow to that point in time as a preview or something. But that doesn't seem to be there. Maybe that's something for a future version or something. But it's definitely useful for seeing what's being changed. This is kind of more, this is how Git is used for professional software development, rather than kind of learning and discovering and as a tutorial, though. It's really about tracking changes, working out where something's been broken, going back to that point, that kind of thing, rather than, as an educational tool.
Making sure you have the flows that you're trying to write a tutorial about, as opposed to them disappearing from one day to the other.
Yeah, and definitely organising your own stuff and things is really useful. I need to do more of that. I've got that little hack script that means I run up new instances of Node-RED with blank flows and package settings. So I have different, like this one is a completely blank one because it's on my machine, but I have that script where I just store them on a local disk, which is kind of useful because it means I don't have to install everything, so I can manage dependencies and things. So I have nothing. I always have to start with a completely stock Node-RED and then install just what I want to work with on that point. Whereas obviously when you're so this is an interesting question. I'll try. In fact, let's switch back to mine because I want to try this on my screen. If I can have control. So I'm currently in this project, which asked me to install the ngrok package. Now, if I switch to a new project, project new, and create a project called test. So if I create a new project, it has removed all the nodes I had installed on that project. So it does also, I don't see ngrok in the palette anymore because when I installed it, I only installed it for that project. So all of your, and obviously, everything you'd want to install. Oh no, I do. Sorry, I still have it there. I thought I did. Yeah, so I installed it. It's installed globally, but the auth has gone. So it keeps the packages, it keeps the nodes, but doesn't keep the credentials because the credentials are in the project. And when I switch to a new project, I've got blank credentials again. But it does keep everything that you've got installed. Obviously, they're not dependencies until you use them in your flow, but your actual palette on the left-hand side would get quite cluttered if you're in this way still, because you've still got them there in your palette unless you remove them.
Okay, so I have to manually remove them after I'm finished with my project.
Yes, if you don't, if you want to clean up your palette, then because this is a brand new project on what should be a completely vanilla blank Node-RED instance, but I've still got the ngrok node here that we installed as part of that last project. So when you install something, it installs it to everything, but it just doesn't appear in the dependencies. So it's Yeah, it'd be nicer if it kind of let you. I don't know. It's odd because you're going to forget. I suppose, although it's going to tell you what to install, so I can't decide about that. I suppose it depends how many nodes you install. For me, who's like, whenever I want to, quite often I want to play with a node to see what it does. To somebody's asking me a question about it or something, I kind of want to install it, but I don't want to just leave everything piling up in there. I mean, I could go in and uninstall them, but that just feels like it's getting messy. So I use this little script I've got, which starts up Node-RED as a completely blank setting, install a package, play around with the package, and then just blow it away, kind of thing. So,
how do you do that? Sorry, I missed it.
That is a script I have called nr here. I don't think it's on this machine. No, it's on the other machine. So what I did was I created a script in my home directory bin called nr here. Let's make this a bit bigger.
Yeah, that's definitely way too small.
It's a really simple script. There we go. Can you see that?
Getting there, and I have a little bit of lag. Yes, that is good.
It still looks very small on the stream. Oh, there we go. I'm making it bigger on the stream now, so we can see how long the lag is. Let's go a bit more. That's still a bit. So I've got this script called nr here, and what it does is you can actually you can give it a it launches a Node-RED in the current path as the users and do it, but using the global settings. So it uses my main settings.js, so my password and everything is kept. But it stores the flows and the nodes files. So it starts up Node-RED with, it's all it really is this command here. To start Node-RED with a user dir, so where I'm going to store my flows of the current directory, because wherever I'm running the command from. The same for the nodes. It creates a folder called nodes, but it goes and gets the settings. So if I go into, it won't work because I'm running Node-RED, but I just go into, slash, if I want to create a real throwaway one, I can go into /temp, make a dir called test, test, and then I can just type nr here, and it'll start up. It'll fail because Node-RED's running on something else, but it'll start up Node-RED with the folders being in /temp. So all of the flows and the nodes and everything are saved there rather than in your global one. And because it's starting Node-RED, and if you're starting a fresh one, it's starting it without thinking that you've got any nodes installed, because the nodes are installed somewhere else. So I'm just giving it a different path to where to store the flows and the nodes that I'm using. But it's quite useful. It's a useful little script for having just give me a clean Node-RED every time. I think it's on my gist. Well, if not, I'll send you that script. Pretty simple.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, that's just over an hour. I feels like we've kind of looked at everything in projects. Was there anything else? It was mainly the project stuff we were going to look at. Let's have a quick look at the docs and see what else it mentions. Takes a walk through creating your project, setting up the encryption of the credentials. So that the encryption of your credentials file is the kind of important bit to understand, because up until now it's been very easy with Node-RED to just not really worry about that if you're only working on one machine. But if you're going to start backing things up and stuff, you can actually set it to be unencrypted as well. So it would just put your credentials, and that credentials file would contain your raw credentials. But obviously that's a bad idea for lots of places. So the project settings, the dependencies. it's showing you. So it's talking to like we did. This was that thing about how to install. So when it recognizes the packages, you've just got the little install thing there. Didn't see was there's no version control because there's no version control. There is version control. Version control shows us what's been changed where. It doesn't allow us to actually mark a version, but we can put that in our commit name. We can commit it with a tag. We can obviously use multiple branches. So there's a lot of stuff in here that kind of assumes that you've got a reasonable working knowledge of Git, which is a little bit of a harder thing to get your head around, especially if you're kind of new to code, or even if you've been writing code for 20 years. Git's still just a mystery to some of us. I don't believe there's anybody out there that knows everything about how Git works. There's 27 ways to do everything, and people have different ways of doing it. But we have Lorna. Maybe Lorna knows everything about Git. She's the nearest there is to one. This was the bit about
the only thing.
Keys, so.
Sorry.
So for Git SSH, so Node-RED will offer a list of public keys that it finds on the system. So it looks in your home directory .ssh, which is where your keys are stored, and says which one of those keys do you want to use. And you're still talking about Git. Well, we're talking about projects, but projects are all backed by Git, Lorna. So it's kind of this is the Git of low code. Does Node-RED actually still have... Sorry, does GitHub still have their desktop tool? They do?
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see how that's... I don't know if that's makes it any better for doing this. I mean, the website's actually pretty good for a lot of this.
I mean, if you wanted to see...
You have it? Hang on.
Yes.
I used it. Stop sharing.
Just a second, let me quickly click through to something more public. Yes.
Alex apparently likes the desktop tool. I just found the website, between the website and the command line, most of the things I want to do. Find a window where I can see your screen. Okay.
Right. So this is the desktop version. I already have I can't see my toolbar. Right. So I shouldn't show you this. I'm guessing I have to open up.
Yeah. So Julia Code, what do we call it? Does it not just find everything, or do you have to download? Also, you download stuff, or you clone stuff into it from there, do you?
I'm guessing I have to clone it in.
But then that's going to actually pull down the...
Usually I just create a new repository because I am working on my machine, so...
Yeah, so this is...
It goes the other way
more
up.
for managing the stuff on your machine. What's Alex saying?
The project
Quite a bit of magic baked in. I still got Lorna in the command line. Yeah. Yeah, so I think the project is kind of working at the same level as this. I don't think you could use this. You could potentially use this to like back something out. So you could add a repository, and maybe you could use this tool to move it back. So move your version to remove a commit, then push that back up, and then pull it in projects. But
I'm guessing I could open it locally, but I'm not exactly sure.
Well, no, because locally it would be hidden by it's kind of in the Node-RED. I suppose you could in the projects folder. But I think you kind of don't view this as a way to work with the files.
So would it help if...
Yeah, let's add a...
Oh. So it is loading my repositories. In reverse order, I suppose.
Just search, type low code, and it will find it. Low code our test. Okay, so without, we didn't put a hyphen in low code.
Yep. And then local path.
You don't want to put it in Zapier posts and doesn't. You need to create an empty folder. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So what have we got in history? Cool. So yeah, you can see the changes. Now, can we, if we wanted to say remove my fixed ngrok commit, would it let you do that easily on here? Yeah, revert this commit.
Revert.
So now you need to, yep, so you've reverted it, which should have removed what I've done with a new commit, and then you would need to push that up. Now go into Node-RED, and yeah, refresh that one.
And now I can
pull it behind. Yeah, and it reverts it. So that would be a way to undo a change if you wanted to from the tool. But you use the tool, so you pull it down into the GitHub tool, you make the changes, you push it back up.
I'm just wondering whether that could be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's saving those files locally somewhere.
Oh yeah. So
and if I could find that folder.
Will be in. If you go to your command line when you started up Node-RED, it shows you the path.
Yeah.
You see there, somewhere says projects folder.
So
close file.
I could.
I think it's the projects folder. Make that a little bit wider. Yeah, it flows file. There's Node-RED projects. We look in.
So can I add that as a repository?
Add existing. Yeah, so it already exists as a Git repo.
So local
so go
paths.
choose, and it should bring up a navigate. Oh yeah, do.
Yeah, but the Node-RED is a hidden.
Oh yeah, it won't show up. I think it's going to be local. Yeah, there should be a .git file in .git in there. So .git directory.
So like that?
Yeah, you might need a slash on the end. I don't know. Like that. Yeah. There it is, because it's just a repo on your machine. So in there, that is the folder where everything is, isn't it? If you open up another terminal and just look in that. Path.
To look at
that users.node-red, that path we did. So yeah, just go cd. You might need to make your thing a bit bigger, but that's fine. Yeah, and now let's see what's in there. ls minus l. Or yeah, al, whatever. Yeah, so that's everything that gets committed. In fact, do ls minus la. you'll see the .git folder. Yep, so it's got a .git and the git and everything. So it's, yeah, I mean, that's where your repository is and where everything's committed. So you could use the tool that way to manipulate stuff. You could even presumably do run git commands from the command line there. So you could do git push origin main from there instead of in Node-RED. Although I wouldn't advise it because you'd likely to.
Probably.
Well, it's fine if you're not running Node-RED, because when you restart Node-RED, it'll read the files from there. But I wouldn't try and like change it there at the same time as you've got it open in Node-RED. Right. Well, that was mostly the Git hour. Although it's useful. The projects is definitely a handy feature, and I think even if you're not using it with GitHub, it's got a lot of value to use. So, what are we going to do in 2 weeks? Because you wrote the ticket. What we said.
I will make sure I'm correct about this, but I believe we are exploring another low-code tool. Well, the jury is still out whether it's low-code or no-code, and that will be VoiceFlow.
Oh, cool! Yes, we're going to talk about VoiceFlow, aren't we? Yes. So we'll do something a bit different, but yeah, that'll be 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. So VoiceFlow, which is mostly for building, I would say the A word, Alexa cancel, bots or Alexa skills and Google. Thank you, Alexa cancel. And I can't even reach it to turn it off. Oh wow, he's being really, really wordy today. Yeah, so we can use it to build skills for that and for Google Home, but also I think they have some IDR tools and some other things. So it'll be interesting to look at something that's maybe a little bit more like defined to a specific set of use cases, but is definitely a low code or no code tool. So, cool, and that's that. For those of you that I don't know if you can actually see what's on the whiteboard behind me. I thought I'd put the I'd do the low-tech version of putting the coupon code, but it's on my whiteboard and it's been there all throughout. So if anybody's noticed, I think it's.
I could read it when it was the two-way.
Oh, when it was in the bigger screen, yeah. In fact, we go back to the the bigger screen. So yeah, the coupon code is VONTW17, which is there. So that'll give you, I think it's €10 of free credit to play with Vonage APIs. Oh, and Lorna's now, she doesn't work via chat. Next Wednesday, yes, Lorna's talking about messages API stuff. I'm not sure what else. Oh, and it's an hour earlier. The clocks don't change or anything yet, though, do they? That's just no, being an hour earlier. And I must remove the chat from this view. So. Right, well, thank you, everyone. Let's call that a day then. So, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.